Do you know where we're going?
I'm confused. Where are we going? I thought Ahmed was taking me to the Gold Coast, but in fact he's bringing me here to Bendigo. My favourite part in the masjid, subhanAllah, it's usually the dome and the minaret, subhanAllah. Look at that. As we were coming here, we've seen it. That's the first thing we've seen was the minaret, subhanAllah. And that's how you know the presence of Muslims are here. Subhanallah. Massive. Allahumma barik. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Honestly, what are you feeling right now?
Well, I'm overwhelmed, alhamdulillah. And it's an honor for the Muslims here in Bendigo now finally to have a masjid built for them. They were using the community hall in the university, subhanAllah. But now, after all these years, after all these massive protests against the masjid, not from locals, from outside of Bendigo, subhanAllah, we're finally here.
I just wanted to do this one because I've been pointing out the Bendigo Mosque, and I mean Bendigo in particular, for the last several years. And around that, and I've also been pointing out these potential for a sleeper cell thing. Now, I think there's a lot of things that are kind of building towards a precipice at the moment, both politically, what we've seen in Israel now having a so-called ceasefire, and then obviously looking for retaliatory responses, things being spoken about, the Dome of the Rock being a potential target, and then everything, all the different patterns that I've seen over the years, and then particularly Ole Demigard speaking about the attack that he thwarted in 2019 around this multi-state, multi-city terrorist attack. And I don't know if people have been watching Candace Owens and stuff at the moment too, but she was going into these, a lot of the people that were coming up in the interviews around the Charlie Kirk thing all happened to work for the same military contractor and were all in the suburbs of this certain area, and they all work for the same thing. Now, this has happened before. It was like the case when JonBenet Ramsey, which actually has come up in the media again now, and they all, JonBenet Ramsey, the people in that area, all kind of work for Raytheon. And I've heard Ole Demigard speak about this before, and he's heard this directly from high-level military intelligence and CIA insiders, that they would have either gated communities or just communities in which the entire community were intelligence. And one of the best cases for this, and this has actually been widely documented, was the Sandy Hook thing, in which to Newtown, Connecticut, I think it was, that entire town was CIA. And then you've gone, even people like Jay Parker speak about, he was from a town called Arden, Delaware, which is a small artsy kind of town. It's actually where the guy that invented Monopoly came from. And he said that the entire town was a cult. And a lot of these people work for Intel and stuff like this. So we know these things exist just from um, witnesses and records from the past from people speaking about it. So going on to that, Candace has been found out that these guys have all been working for this military contractor, and they will work and the company itself, they make specific valves. And she read in one of her, I won't be able to find it, but she read in one of her shows, and she was talking because she was going, "Oh, this is a military thing." Like, she's kind of being fed this stuff, I think. But anyway, she's talking about these valves that this company makes, and she's like, "What's the odds that like all these witnesses all work for this company that makes these valves? They're actually kind of seen as they're actually under like national security and stuff like this. That the importance of these valves, and it's because of their use in infrastructure, particularly around, she said, like everything from like military equipment to shipping and water, water systems, all these kind of things. So they use these particular valves, right? And these things can be switched on and off. So anyway, it's an important piece of equipment. But this goes to what Ole Demigard was saying about this 36 state attack that was, he believed, he thought it in 2019, and I think that is still potential to be in the future. And what he was talking about, they were going to hit places like Rotterdam and like port cities and stuff like that. And we saw this with Baltimore, in which that was that bridge thing that happened, in which that boat hit that bridge. And this is the other thing too, that all these boats and like the internet itself, piping, water, everything's run on the internet these days. It's the same as like you can't even fill up the petrol at the petrol station without the person clicking the switch and it being connected to the internet. And I've had this happen before, that I've gone to the service station. They said, "Oh, you can't use the pump because the internet's down." I'm like, what the fuck? So it's like nothing's manual. We're in a completely digital and internet world. So anyway, this leaves widely open to like what I believe could be potential infrastructure attack, right? Now, we've seen a lot of the stuff happen with knives and stuff like that, but I think infrastructure is a big one. So I just want to preface with that why that I'm kind of doing this, but I want to share the stuff now because I've been talking about Bendigo again, like I said, for a long time. And those that went and saw my talk I did in Bendigo at the start of this year, I think it was in March. I just got up on the share screen. It was in March this year. Yeah, it was this year, yeah. And so I was talking about a bit of the history of Bendigo, which is like, that's an entire other story, that you got these beautiful, innate European style, Greek, Roman, German kind of architecture, and also this beautiful Gothic cathedral, all this stuff that was built, all in this time of like 20 kind of years after settlement, around the goldfields area. And even things like the stones from the quarry that were taken to build the cathedral, were coming all the way from Geelong. So this is horse and cart days. And anyway, so like that's a whole other story. But when I was looking at all that kind of stuff, I found that Bendigo was actually founded the same year that Victoria was founded. It was founded as a city the same year Victoria. Now, I can't remember it off the top of my head now. I think it might be 1863, but whatever it was a pig year. And there was actually a massive bushfire that went through Victoria. I think it was that year or the year before, which is really interesting. It's one of the biggest bushfires in Australian history. It went through Victoria, and then Bendigo was founded. Now, I won't go on about this, but I find it interesting just because of the stuff that's coming up with Thomas Sowell. So, especially if you follow this GG guy, he speaks about enemy signs and opposing signs, and I've mentioned this before, that it's actually to do with the Saturn cycle. So it's a 12-year cycle. So the opposite of the pig is the snake, which is the year we're in now. So what this guy says is that when you're in the opposing year, that's actually when Saturn has its least effect, and Saturn being Jupiter being the planet of abundance and good fortune, all these kind of things. So when it's furthest or most distant, that means, like things can go wrong in that year. Now, the previous year was 2013. And this is the year when we saw the very start of the mosque being announced that it was going to be built in Bendigo, and it's taken the full 12-year Jupiter cycle all the way around the Chinese zodiac to come back to a snake year again, the opposition of the pig. Now, Victoria and Bendigo, being the pig, are going to be highlighted this year, either for bad fortune or being in the news. Now, I've mentioned before that Blair Cottrell was the head of the United Patriots Front back in the time, which is now basically has morphed into the National Socialist Network with Thomas Sowell. And he became kind of synonymous. He was coming to town holding these protests where they were bussing in both the left and right wing activists. And it became a big thing. It was like Bendigo was the top of the news for like a long time there anyway. So this has been ruffling in the background of the town for a long time. And there's people that go and protest about the mosque to this day, and they've been doing it. But anyway, it's being built, and it was just about to be opened recently. And I'll stop the share. I just want to show you this one. It is about to be opened. And then I saw this, someone shared this online, a friend I know. I'm like, fuck, this is really interesting. So with the mosque, and I can speak about how like black ops and military operations occur just from what I've learned from Ole. Not that I've got no history in the military or anything like that. I don't know, but I've spoke to other people. And I'm not putting this out saying like absolutely this is going to happen, but I'm just like, I think there's something to look at here. So this is posted last week. 4th Brigade Australian Army Bendigo exercise from Monday the 20th of October, so that's been this week, until Saturday the 25th of October. Soldiers and officers of the 4th Brigade Australian Army will undertake exercises ARRS walk for professional development of their personnel. Parts of the exercise will be conducted within the community of Bendigo and public roads and within local properties. Members of the public are advised that their awareness that they may see military personnel and vehicles within the community. Soldiers and officers will be in uniform, carrying weapons. There will be a small number of training activities where blank ammunition will be used. This may make a sound of gunshot, but does not fire a bullet or any projectile. The exercise is being conducted in a safe manner, following consultation with police and local council, of course. So, first of all, why would you pick training, right? Professional development. It's not an operation, but it's training. So it's a drill. And why would you pick it in an urban area unless you're training for some sort of urban warfare or lockdown of the community or whatever? So, like, that's interesting in itself. And then why choose Bendigo as the target? I think there's more. Oh yeah, so that's the other photo of it. Now the other thing is, it was really hard to get any information on this. I couldn't find anything. Like when I was googling this and trying to find any information, there's nothing. I spoke to a few people in town. They said they really haven't really even seen anything. But what I want to get to is, I actually don't have a picture. I'll put it up here. Is the mosque. Actually, I'll put this one up just here too. So this was the federal election that was recently held. Now, Lisa Chesters has been in Bendigo, won multiple terms. Bendigo's been a Labor stronghold since, I think, the mid-90s. No one's been able to take the seat. There was a guy that sat in there for about 20 years or so before her, or 15 years, and she's been in forever. Anyway, so this was like the last federal election. And this guy, Andrew Leffland, who I actually know, I actually spoke to him a couple of weeks ago. I said, do you think you won the election? He's like, oh, yeah, probably. But he came out of nowhere as a Nationals. And you got to remember, this is a stronghold. And this is a local guy, very well known in the community, respected in the community. Lisa Chesters is not from Bendigo. She came down from Canberra to take a stand-in easy seat that is always going to be won. But this actually went down to the wire, and they were counting for multiple days, and I was checking, and they kept switching the lead anyway, and then she pulled away with the win. I think, I'm not sure if it was a postal vote or whatever it was at the end, and then this is kind of the sentiment around Bendigo at the moment. It says, a fake bin has appeared in Bendigo outside Premier Jacinta Allen's office. This message can't be ignored. So, like, yeah, there's kind of a lot going on. So I just want to show just a bit of the history of like where this mosque is going. Now, I think that the Bendigo Mosque is just absolutely prime and center stage for like if there was ever going to be an attack in Victoria. And I think they would choose this because, like I said, because of the 12-year cycle that just kind of matches up. And then you've got all the stuff that's happened recently with the promotion of this guy, Thomas Sewell, with anti-Semitism being kind of on the rise, and also being allowed to be spread all through social media like never before. Like they've completely cut the censorship on that, and now you've got the Australia Day rallies, in which like the National Socialist Network's been present in some of them. So they're kind of really building on this, and then you've got the digital ID and stuff like that, and censorship coming in, and the hate bill, and all this kind of stuff, which goes all the way back. I should actually start here first. Um, this one. So this was many years ago, and this is what first kind of triggered me, because I know someone else that was involved in another drill at the Bendigo University, in which it was like a mock kind of shooting scenario and stuff like that. But then they run other one. They've run multiple counterterrorism drills in Bendigo, but this one was from 2005. So obviously this was like post, pretty close after 9/11, only 4 years after it, and only 3 years after the Bali bombing. So all of that was kind of fresh. And then it was also the same year as the London bombing. So terrorism was a big thing back then. And a lot of this was to do with changing the counterterrorism legislation, which is now we're starting to see with the sovereign citizen stuff, the intention of what this legislation was actually meant for, because it was never meant to be for the Muslim terrorist. It was always going to be about the domestic terrorists. And that's what the push really is for now too. So this is 2005. Thousands of police and Australian Defence Force personnel have been involved in the country's biggest counter-terrorism exercise centred on Bendigo.
Yesterday, there was a mock terrorist kidnapping of 37 people on the way to the Commonwealth Games event. So this was when they were going to have the Commonwealth Games there. State Police Minister Tim Holding, now remember him, says it involved a range of groups and government agencies across the nation tested for real-time responses. It involves everyone from the Prime Minister down, really responding all the way through different protocols, arrangements, consultations, arrangements of making decisions and declaration particular situations that exist over the arrangement. Other arrangement can be put in place. So what we're looking at here is a simulated drill, everything. And this was run in 2005, right? So this is 20 years ago. Now, don't say it's out of order that some of these things, you've got to go all the way back to this stuff. Now, this was like, again, centered around Bendigo, a mock terrorist kidnapping of 37 people. And Tim Holding, I've mentioned him many times, but I'll do it again just briefly, former Emergency Services Minister in Victoria, now lives over in London. He was actually the guy who he went missing. I don't know if people remember that minister that went missing up hiking and stuff like that. Anyway, so he ended up working for the Strong Cities Summit.
And this is the one I found. I spoke about this many times too. This is a 2018 one found hosted in Victoria. So this was a Strong Cities Summit, third annual global summit, provided a unique forum for policymakers, practitioners, academia, and other specialists to connect and develop a range of regional specific best practice approaches for counteracting and preventing violent extremism. This was a thing, right? This is in 2018, seven years ago. A lot of the wording and stuff like that, you weren't hearing back then. It was only just starting to dribble out. But it says here, new models of multiple agency cooperations, global local integration, and how to harness the private sector into technology to tackle polarization and violent extremism, right? Like, fucking, mate, are they onto it? Now, Tim Holding was one of the speakers at this event, and they were naming in these documents as this was the number one threat to the world. And what they do is they get a lot of local councils, right, in this. It's local council that is behind this, because it's part of the UN thing. Now, people would know the Strong City Summit. I did videos on this in 2020, and I was pointing this out around the time that all these people go, oh, what's happening in Victoria? Even like the protests and stuff on the weekend, why is it only, even if nothing's actually happening in Victoria, why is the shit always going down in Victoria? Like, we saw the cop throw these rocks out the other day and say, oh, look, this was actually the left-wing extremists this time, but they're going to use that to justify crackdown on everyone. So I don't know why people are kind of cheering that on. But where was the George Floyd thing? Minneapolis, Minnesota, another strong city. So there's over 32 countries involved, 250 local leaders. And of course, Bendigo is involved. I was going to find it here. Anyway, they speak a lot about violent extremism and being the #1 threat. Now, remember, this was in 2018. Okay, all right. I'll try and whiz through some of this. When was this one? So this was 2019. Bendigo Council defends anti-terrorism measures despite event cancellation. City of Bendigo staff have defended the new anti-terrorism measures and events despite the recent cancellation of Bendigo Fun Run. Organisers of the Bendigo Annual Fun Run last week announced the cancellation of this year's event due to increased costs and security measures, which included barriers to protect against possible attacks using vehicles. Now, this was 2019. The vehicle stuff was kind of happening a lot around 2015, 2016, 2017, if people remember. Risk assessment management for the community events is being shaped around Victoria's guidelines of planning safe and public events. Now, this is when Bendigo started to install bollards and stuff in Bull Street around the main centre of town. So again, just highlighting this in sleepy old Bendigo. Okay, so this is the mosque that's in place at the moment too. If you can go onto their website, they've also got an Instagram page, which is it's a bit creepy. I don't know if I can play some of the videos here. I'll try and play some. It's interesting. This goes through all the different stages of the mosque, but I've just found out that it's meant to be opening recently, very soon. And that's why I found it interesting. It's kind of coinciding that these military drills are taking place in Bendigo just prior to it. Now, if you look at where the Bendigo Mosque is located, it is directly next to the Bendigo Airport. It's out in the industrial area, so it's kind of out of town.
This year, we have the most powerful lineup in the history of the Cosmic Consciousness Conference. Potent, dynamic and passionate facilitators. They're not here to perform. They're here to serve you, to expand your growth, to raise your consciousness. Between them they have centuries of combined mastery, and together at Tambourine Mountain they're one unified field, all to help raise the frequency of humanity. Light workers, we came here for this. The shift is accelerating. Revelation is peaking. What happens next is in our hands. If there's one thing you do this year to invest in yourself, let this be it.
Well, it starts round Griffith and works on down the south, down to Echuca, following the old stock route. There's acres of rice, keeping all the country green. Yeah, no better place in Australia you've ever seen. Down in the Riverina, down in the Riverina. Well, it's God's own country, you hear that all the time.
Know where we're going?
I'm confused. Where are we going? I thought Ahmed was taking me to the Gold Coast, but in fact he's bringing me here to Bendigo. My favourite part in the masjid, subhanAllah, it's usually the dome and the minaret, subhanAllah. Look at that. As we're all coming here, we're seeing it. That's the first thing we're seeing was the minaret, subhanAllah. And that's how you know the presence of Muslims are here. Subhanallah. Massive. Allahumma barik. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Honestly, what are you feeling right now?
Well, I'm overwhelmed, alhamdulillah. And it's an honor for the Muslims here in Bendigo now finally to have a masjid built for them. They were using the community hall in the university, subhanAllah. But now, after all these years, after all these massive protests against the masjid, not from locals, from outside of Bendigo, subhanAllah, we're finally here.
Now, if people follow Ole's work, they would know that location of a place, not just for energetic purposes, but especially for logistics, if you're going to run an operation, location is extremely important. And they love to use small towns with airports close by. And I've also mentioned before places like Mena, Arkansas, that was used as the center of the cocaine running operation into America with like Barry Seal and all the cocaine that was coming out of Nicaragua and stuff like that. that brought all the crack cocaine. It coincided with the time that just after that Bill Clinton then moved all the jobs offshore and everything like that to break down these Black America in part. So they were using this tiny little airport in Mena, Arkansas. And the other one was where the drugs were coming into Australia. They were using Wollongong Airport. And I'm kind of suspect of Avalon Airport too, especially with Lindsay Fox's association, I think even ownership with Avalon Airport. But anyway, my point is that they use small town airports. There's also another one in Colorado that is basically the entire airport is a CIA airport run. And they obviously use this for logistics to move things in and out. So if you have control of an airport, I'm not saying I do with Bendigo, I have no evidence of that, but I just find it interesting that the mosque is there too. Now, one thing that you could do is that, so Ole mentions too that a lot of the times they will do pre-recording and stuff like that and move logistics in and out prior to an event. And then when the event goes live, then you can move people out of the airport. But he said they'll use places like town halls, libraries and stuff like that, and a lot of that is to also do with the jurisdiction of the area, who the local council is, who the judges and stuff are within that area, and who the chief of police is in that area. So if you have a number of certain things covered, then the operation can go swiftly. So I'm not sure. Well, I think they do have the owners of this mosque, and I know that they were getting mass funding from certain Wahhabist sect groups within Sydney, and that's why a lot of the people were opposed to it, including one of the top theologians at La Trobe University, who was very in with the Muslim community, and he was completely against them building this mosque. I think it's the biggest mosque in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, you got to remember at the time of when they decided they announced to build this in 2013, there was a tiny Muslim community in Bendigo, very, very small. And that community in Bendigo, and this was around the time too that they were just about to go into Syria, if people remember that. So you had Libya that happened in 2011 going into 2012. So then 2012, 2013, this was the time of the Syrian war, and then that was meant to escalate. I've mentioned many times too that 2016 was some sort of time shift event. There were many things that happened that year, including Brexit, Trump getting elected, and then also Putin. This one's never spoken about much, but Putin stepping into Syria saved that country and saved like a whitewash of a military takeover by the US into that area very quickly, which never happened. And you saw the biggest protest by people within the US military that we've never seen before, that were basically saying, I will not fight. I did not join the US military to fight for Al Qaeda, which is what they were doing. I support the rebels in that area. But basically, the plan was to bring all these Syrians over to Bendigo. But that, because of what happened with that war, there weren't really many Syrian immigrants. So this is like now twisted and altered and stuff like that now too. So there was no justification to build the biggest mosque in the Southern Hemisphere in Bendigo, historically the widest city in Australia, which was, when I was at least studying sociology, I believe was over 80% Cornish. So everyone in the whole town was not just from England, but was from a small part of England. That's how much of I guess like a Australian white Anglo-Celtic town it was. It's always been that way, and it's drastically changing now at the moment. I'll play that one there. Here we go. Bendigo Mosque set to open. This is only just last week or 2 weeks ago. This was posted, 29th of September. Bendigo Mosque set to open 10 years from hostile protests. It has been hard for Aisha Neiman to find anyway, they're talking about this woman. They interview this Muslim immigrant to Bendigo. Okay, so this is what I want to get to. Essentially, at the core of it, this is all just about coming together as people, she said, but her relief was shortly lived. A series of far right-wing led protests erupted in the historic gold mining town, organised predominantly by the now defunct United Patriots Front group, which is Blair Cottrell. Police warned the Muslim community to keep a low profile. We were told just stay out of the CBD area. Now, I'm telling you, there was no threat to any Muslims at this time in Bendigo. There was absolute bullshit. And all the shit that was coming in, it was people that were being bussed in for this protest on either side. Bendigo was being used as a political tool. But I find this really interesting too. Just like even the naming, right? A light in the dark. A light in the dark. Construction of the mosque began in July 2019. 4 years earlier, a mock beheading, which I just spoke of before, was held outside the local council office. During demonstrations that turned ugly, supporters of the mosque were put under police surveillance. Anthony Radford was one of the residents supporting through the counter movement called Believe in Bendigo. He had death threats, he was saying. Okay, so I had 2 to 3 death threats. So they're kind of like, this is being brought back up now, right? 90% of the people who protested who objected to the actual planning application were outside Bendigo. I would agree with that. The Bendigo Mosque issue was a hotspot of war and anti-Islamic sentiment. The group of residents launched a High Court appeal. Okay, so it's kind of going through that. There's another important bit in here too. Bendigo's growing multicultural population, which they're talking about here. This is all like the whole Kalogi plan that's now filtered this way, all the way down to central Victoria. This is happening in front of our eyes. We're witnessing the long planned Kalogi plan and the destruction of Western culture and Anglo-Celtic culture. It's all happening. The anti-mosque protests, inspired by Tim Jones, Associate Professor of History on the Trade University, to begin researching multiculturalism in Victoria. Okay, I've got that PDF. There was another bit I wanted to know. They keep bringing up about like this Muslim history in Central Victoria, like it was a thing in the gold rush. Okay, here we go. So this is like the theme that they're kind of putting out here, right? You get a sense of really friendly interaction, but Dr. Jones said Bendigo's population has changed significantly after Federation. Bendigo becomes a smaller, much wider, and much less culturally diverse place through the course of the 20th century. So, it's got, like it's a bad thing. He said concerns around objection of the mosque needed to be adequately addressed to improve culture and understanding and should not be dismissed. Hope for progress. A small group of protesters still occasionally go to the mosque. So anyway, just highlighting that that's in the news here. Further investment into Bendigo's new Bushmasters. Now, I just want to point this out too, because if you want to do something, there's also like retaliatory attacks, because this is where so much of Australia's money that is being laundered to Ukraine is going into these Bushmasters, which are made in Bendigo. So this actually makes Bendigo a military target, because you've got the base outside of Bendigo as well. You've got the Geospatial Centre, and then you've got Puckapunyal, which is about 150 kilometres away. Okay, I've done that one. Okay, I just want to go into the pictures if I can. That's not it. Fuck, that's not it. Okay, here it'll be. Oh, let's go move that. Hang on. Don't know why this is not showing. It should be here somewhere. I'll try it. Oh, here we go. That's why. All right. Bendigo Islamic Centre received funding boost under Labor 2022. Bendigo Federal Minister Lisa Chester announced the federal Labor government will commit $100,000 towards the completion of the Bendigo Islamic Centre. And this was the other thing too. This was coming out being questioned in the Senate last year too, that they're funding these under social coercion too. A lot of different Islamic groups around the country. So I've done that one. Now also here, Bendigo Airport gets more federal cash, March 2025, but other flights on the cards. So there's the other thing. They've been upgrading the Bendigo Airport for quite a while now, but like that, I think the only flight you can really get to Bendigo, you can do Bendigo to Sydney. They might do that twice a day, and maybe to Adelaide. I think that's it. But again, logistically, perfect for an operation around the mosque. And this is kind of what I'm hypothesizing that is a possibility, that with all these previous counter-terrorism drills and stuff in Bendigo, now the military in town, weird, like training for urban warfare or lockdowns or any of that kind of stuff. Now, like, I don't think any town should really tolerate this. Like, how the fuck should that be acceptable? There's plenty of different places they can train. There's no need for them to be doing that in central Victoria. But again, the military can always be used as cover for other operations. And I just think the mosque is just absolutely prime. So there's a quote from that previous article that I put in there. Pretty interesting, right? Into how ugly the world can get, but at the same time also how sometimes something really beautiful grow out of something really, really dark. Now, this was in an article just posted like last week, right? Speaking about the opening of the mosque and people's opinions on in the past. I'll say it again, into how ugly the world can get, but at the same time also how sometimes something really beautiful grows from something really, really dark, right? Is that forewarning? Why would you put that in? I found that really weird. I'll just point out here too, that's one bit before, the much wider and less culturally diverse. Even light and dark theme. This was even kind of used with the Charlie Kirk. It was like the light of the church. That's kind of been a theme. I think I've gone over most of it all. So yeah, I think just it's not like I'm not putting this out to go,
oh fuck, they're going to do something. It's just, I do think there is like a wider thing that's happening. Just even like we've seen what's happening with ICE and stuff now, and also the pressure of like what's kind of occurring with some of the arrests we've seen of like Comey, now John Bolton, both the Clintons being subpoenaed. It feels like a lot's happening politically, and that something's on the cards with it. But like, what was the Michael Tazarian one he said the other day? He said evil is built within the seeds of its own destruction, and that's so true. And if you just look at the what's been occurring, like not to pigeonhole Israel or anything like that, but just look at what they've been doing over the last couple of years, and that is so relevant to that area, and it's so true. It's like evil contains the seeds of its own destruction. It cannot win, right? It must expose itself. And I've just seen, just with the conversations I'm having with just normal people now, and even like some younger kids, and like their awareness of just like some of the basics of how things are going, and just people's complete lack of trust in the institutions now, even like the banks. People just don't trust anything anymore too. But it's showing that it's reaching a point that there really needs to be something really big and strong to end through anything as far as like moving this agenda forward. Now, ultimately, I don't think like this whole dark occult New World Order is like, it's just not happening. I don't see any way that it's happening. And I just go back to that Michael Tazarian thing that he said, because it's like you can just see like the rattling cages of this thing being destroyed. But in the process of that, I think like some of it is like, 'cause we're living within blueprinted realities, and then the individual has real say over how they react and interact with that blueprinted reality. There's part of the collective that is always fixed, but you can alter things within your own surroundings and your own life, and how you move through cycles and stuff like that, that you are an individual, that you have true individual soul expression, and that some things really are fixed and blueprinted. I think ultimately we do have say to some degree on a blueprint of reality, but that is done through the quantum collective, which is just the mean aggregate of the average consciousness of everyone, which eventually shakes up the entire system. But ultimately some things are fixed. And I think as far as an attack and furthering the culture war, whether it be a Muslim attack on something, on a church or whatever, or whether it be blaming a white nationalist on an attack on a mosque, which could happen in Bendigo. So anyway, I just wanted to I want to make it like this is absolutely going to happen, but I know from like what I always point out a lot of the time, it's actually better to put it out and stop it from happening. And even something like that as an individual can alter a timeline. I don't want to get like egotistical, like I could stop that, but it's like, I think it's just something to point out. Even with Trump going on and saying there will be 100% 100% chance of a terrorist attack inside the United States, and was going to be one of these border entry people that have come in over the last several years. And then also now to Anthony Albanese saying that he's going to take in 2,000 more Palestinians. So it's just setting the stage and opening up for something like that to occur. So anyway, also I've put up that video yesterday just about the Cosmic Consciousness Expo. I won't be going into any of this stuff. I'm going to make it a different presentation than I've done in the past, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I'll be there for the 3 days from the 19th to the 22nd of December. So if you'd like to go, I'll leave a link under here if people want to check it out. And also the Remedy Folk Festival event on, I think it's November 8th. So I'll see you all there. I'll just add this one on the end before I was about to post this video. I just saw that Trump, they have said that he said that Israel would not be allowed to annex the West Bank, which is they can't use the same excuses they have with Gaza. They're going to need some other excuse to say that there's some infiltration from within the West Bank, which they've done many times anyway. But Israel is definitely not going to back down as far as this is concerned, and this is what we've been going to for a long time, and saying that the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem was going to be the prime target, and whatever the scenario might be, actually could go together well with what Ali Demigard spoke about, like this multi-state, multi-city terrorist attack, starting with the mosque and the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. So to see that, and to say that Trump will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank, which they absolutely intend to do, and they've already been speaking about the rebuilding of the Third Temple and stuff like that. Now that can only occur if the Dome of the Rock is destroyed. So I just thought I'd add that one on there too, as well as, what was I going to say about, also around Bendigo. It's just, if you go back to my previous videos there, but the Bendigo Library and now Fortuna Villa are both closed for the next year or so, right? Now, again, we know Fortuna was a former military base, and I've mentioned many things about the Bendigo, the Bendigo Art Gallery before. I don't know if I said Art Gallery before, but Art Gallery. So the main reason I wanted to say is, like, this doesn't mean something's going to happen imminently around the mosque, and especially with the military in, but it's also the fact that there's always a drill presiding an upcoming event, and anything that's done there can either be used as a drill, plan for it, as well as things that can be put in preparation prior to. And also, like, I think they're important targets to also look at, both Fortuna Villa and the Bendigo Art Gallery, especially seemings the military ties with Fortuna before, and also the Bendigo Art Gallery being funded by the Bendigo Council and state government massively over the last couple of decades. So just wanted to add that.
Well, it starts round Griffith and works on down the south, down to Echuca, following the old stock route. There's Acres and Bryce, keeping all the country green. Yeah, no better place in Australia you've ever seen.